Okay, we're halfway through our second day here at the 3Cs Initiative Business Forum. Whether you're joining us here in the room or you're joining us virtually online, welcome back. We've still got 2 panels left and a few announcements to make, so let's get to it. Our next panel, a very intriguing panel, I must say, is on digitalization. If I could ask Karan, Renate, John, Ular, Linas, Mihal, please, if you could take your seats here on the stage. And ladies and gentlemen, let us please welcome the moderator of this panel, Mark Boris Adrianovic, former Slovenian Minister for Digitalization. Please. Just to kick you off, you've got 1 hour and 15 minutes, all right? It's a bit of
I don't know about that.
Okay, cheers.
But thanks so
Good
much,
luck.
Edis, for a very kind introduction. Looking around, I can say that good weather and good coffee are the 2 biggest enemies of any conference. But in any case, I'm very proud and honored to welcome you at the panel with probably the longest title in the history of 3Cs Initiative. I won't read it because we don't have enough time for that. But of course, it's all about digital. It's all about the digital transformation of our incredible region. As we all know, 3Cs Initiative region has become a superpower in the making when it comes to all things digital. We have given to the world over 35 unicorns in the past couple of years. The total value of our startups exceeds 250 million euros, which is something we should be incredibly proud of. Our governments have done a great deal in terms of digital public services. In some areas, we are even leading the world. Now, that's the good news. But there's also the not so good news, meaning that in many areas, we're still lagging behind the West. And this is something that we will, of course, address also during today's panel. I'm talking about digital connectivity. I'm talking about digital inclusion, cybersecurity, and of course, Ukraine, where our region plays a vital role, not just when it comes to welcoming refugees, but also when it comes to providing tech support to the Ukrainian nation. I'm very pleased to welcome a terrific lineup of speakers coming from near and far. We're especially grateful to have Karan Bhatia here, who has traveled the farthest, all the way from Mountain View. Karan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Karan is the Vice President of Google in charge of Public Policy and Government Affairs. Then, of course, we have our wonderful Renate Strazdina, who's the Healthcare and Life Sciences Lead in Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Microsoft. Thanks, Renate, for being with us. Then, of course, it's our, should I say, imported local, a Latvian from Memphis, Tennessee. It's, of course, I'm talking about John Tully, who's a super successful local entrepreneur, the founder of MicroTik company, but also the president of AmCham Latvia. John, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Then we have our Estonian friend, Ular Jakso, who's the founder of Digital Nation Consultancy, but more importantly, also the founder of Green Energy Data Centers, which just received the funding from the 3Cs Initiative Fund. Congratulations, Ular, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
We also have Linas Dičpetris, who's basically leading government and infrastructure market for EY in Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe. Linas, welcome.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have our Polish friend, Michał Kanonik, who's the president of the board of our Digital Poland Association, basically the biggest and most important tech association in our biggest country of the region. Michał, it's great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Now, of course, we need to start with Ukraine. And Karan, perhaps I shall start with you, saying that what's been great to see is that the tech sector was very fast in coming to Ukraine's rescue. And especially Google, I think, has been leading the way when it comes to supporting Ukrainian refugees, when it comes to supporting Ukrainian government, and truly contributing in so many different ways. Now, how has your experience been so far? And what were the key lessons? What are your future plans? And what's your broader commitment to the 3Cs initiative region, and how important this initiative is to Google and for you personally?
Well, Mark, thanks so much, and thanks for moderating what I know is going to be a fascinating panel here. Look, I think the Russian war on Ukraine has really marked, in some sense, a turning point for the technology industry. I will tell you that from my vantage point, I have not seen any global crisis, and we've certainly had a number of them in recent years, but I don't think I've seen anything galvanize the sector, focus minds, and create the level of action that I've seen coming out of the war. I just, from a Google perspective, we started, I'd say, the day of the invasion with a all-of-company effort, from the CEO on down, that was really focused 24/7 on what are we doing to respond to the crisis. And four principal streams of work: fighting disinformation. We've certainly seen the challenge of disinformation come front and center, probably more clearly in the context of this conflict than anything else we've seen recently. So fighting disinformation, in our case, it's been by taking down Russian state-sponsored media from across our platforms. It is by removing YouTube channels and videos, utilizing artificial intelligence to sort of be able to detect the disinformation, shutting down our ads business in Russia because we were worried about that potentially being a channel for disinformation. So that was one big prong. The second was actually working to get good information out there, because it was, the level of interest and need for good information, particularly in Ukraine itself, whether it's information about refugee resources or air raid alerts. We've created this new app for people's phones there that give them early warning of air raids. It's been remarkably effective. So that was a second category. And by the way, in that category of getting good information, I would include to Russia itself. Although we're not doing business there, the people in Russia continue to need, the users, we want to get access to authentic information as to what's happening. So that's a second area. Third is cybersecurity. We've seen newfound challenges in that space throughout the region, but particularly with Ukraine, and we've been working with the government there in a number of ways to protect the infrastructure. And then lastly, of course, is the incredible humanitarian challenge that's being posed, and the need to work with the refugees. To education is an example. We've recently given 40,000 Chromebook computers so that Ukrainian kids can continue to remain connected. So I think that just gives you a feeling for one company and how we've approached it, I've seen it more broadly in the industry as well. It's been heartwarming to see, and I think sets a new bar. As far as the 3Cs initiative goes, look, I think this is the moment in time for the 3Cs initiative. There is an old saying, let no crisis go to waste. This is a crisis, and it is one that I believe, and I've got sort of a global remit here, but as I look around the world, I think this is the opportunity for this crisis to create the level of integration that we would love to see generate a new level of activity, a new level of growth in the region, and there's so much potential here. There's the unicorns you mentioned. There's the indigenous talent. There is the opportunity combined with the geopolitical strategic significance. We think this is a tremendous moment and one that, with the right level of focus and will, could really change things.
Thank you for your continued commitment to the region and investment, of course. Both Google and Microsoft are one of the biggest tech investors in the region, and it's great to see them here and doubling down basically on our region and our talents. It's true, I think the response of the tech sector is in many ways redefining the corporate social responsibility. But it's also true that technology has never played a more vital role than in Ukraine conflict. And I remember Renate, your president, the Microsoft president, saying that this is the largest hybrid war we've had to date. And Microsoft has also been incredibly agile when it comes to supporting both the Ukrainian government and the refugees with the focus on cybersecurity. And please share with us some of the key challenges, some of the key obstacles that you've managed to overcome, and what are your plans moving forward, both for Ukraine and the broader region.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Now I want to build on the current thought that this is unprecedented crisis for us, and we as Dutch companies actually found ourselves as first responders. So we needed to be in the first lines together with Ukrainian government, and really big appreciation to what they are doing and how they are defending their cyberspace. But one thing that we need to remember that Ukraine also before war, they were second most targeted country by threat actors. And it means that we already were working with Ukrainian government, and we were sharing information, and we were working on threat protection in a wider scale. But of course, after the start of the war, the situation changed dramatically. And we also saw that attacks are more frequent, higher scale, and also more destructive. If you compare, then before the war, it was more gathering of information, and then after the war, the destructive attacks started. And what we did, we already at the moment we are more than we finished more than 150 missions with our cybersecurity team, and because Ukrainian parliament was able to change cloud use law, we were able to migrate to safe place in a cloud 16 out of 17 Ukrainian ministries and critical information systems. So this was because of the partnership that was there, and that allows us to continuously support their cyberspace. And we are working in a cybersecurity area, but the same amount of investment we are putting into skilling, because as we all know, so infrastructure is critical to run the country. On the other side, if we will not have skilled people who can run the infrastructure, who can protect themselves, so the effect will not be there. So that's why we are working in, and we will be continuously working in those two areas, in Ukraine, but also beyond.
Thanks so much for these remarks. I think this is just the beginning. We will have to remain committed for many years to come, especially during the reconstruction effort, which can take a while. And it's important that we all remain focused on Ukraine throughout that time. Now, perhaps going to Michał. Poland has done a superb job helping the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian refugees, absorbing millions of them, welcoming them in your homes. And it's truly one of the most remarkable and inspiring stories Europeans, or let's say the world, has seen in a long time. And I know your government has been super active on creating smart digital services that help the refugees. Your digital industry was also, incredibly agile and fast to offer support. Tell us more about what you've been doing so far and what you plan to do in the next couple of months, maybe years.
Unfortunately, we can talk about it many, many hours, not so few minutes, but I will try to focus on the most important activities from our side and our government side. Of course, first, on the beginning of the war, it was absolutely a huge exam for our government, for our society, to find out what to do with all our guests. I will use these words, not refugees, because in Poland we used to call our Ukrainian guests as our guests in our homes, not refugees. And of course, in first 2-3 weeks of this war, for our industry, it was crucial to deliver to this our guests smartphones, chargers, power banks, laptops, to keep them in contact with their families in Ukraine, to find their families in Poland, in Slovakia, in different countries in Europe. We delivered thousands of equipment to different places in Poland, from mobile phones and chargers to washing machines for our guests. Of course, our government had to, in a really very short period of time, prepare a special digital system for identification numbers for our guests, to offer them a special social support to live in Poland, to find some jobs, to have some money for food and clothes. Of course, nowadays we are collecting laptops together with Polish Ministry of Education to help them in schools, not only in Polish schools, but even in online teaching in Ukrainian schools, if, of course, it's possible. And what is the most important for children, our startups prepared online courses for Polish language to learn these children Polish language, because children day by day they were in Polish schools, and they had to find out what to do and understand teachers, colleagues in classes. So it was really a lot of activities. I think that one of the most important our support from Ukraine was for our industry to save data of the hundreds of Ukrainian SMEs, even big companies, public institutions, in free cloud storage. We helped, our companies helped really hundreds of SMEs in process migration of data to cloud, to save their data and help them to back to business after the war. I hope that as soon as possible it will be possible. Of course, Polish government, even before war, prepared a special program, Business Poland Harbor. It's a special program to help Ukrainian, Belarus, or Georgian IT specialists to find job in Poland, get a visa, and find some place for activities in Poland, this business, especially during war. This program was absolutely crucial. We have now hundreds of SMEs from our industry, digital industry, in Poland, and we are working on create a special safe place for them to run their business and build bridges, build cooperation between Polish or European companies, because I hope that the war will end as soon as possible. And after the war, we have to build this cooperation and keep this cooperation between Ukrainian companies and European Polish free seas industry as well.
Thanks so much, Michał. This was amazing. I think it's fascinating to see some of the world's largest companies and huge government bureaucracies moving so fast, hand in hand. And it truly gives us hope that, our societies can be transformed for the better in a reasonable amount of time. Now, as Renate mentioned, in the end, if we look at the broader picture and how certain regions outperform others in terms of digital transformation, it starts with the two foundations. Number one, it's connectivity. Number two is digital skills. So let's dive a little bit into the connectivity part. Now, Linas, you have been working with a lot of governments in the region and beyond. And it's no secret that we are, as a region, lagging behind when it comes to the rollout of broadband, also 5G. And to be perfectly honest, Europe itself is lagging behind the US and China in this area. So what can we do to accelerate the rollout of both technologies and make sure that we reach the Digital Compass goals, which is 100% penetration of broadband across our region as soon as possible?
It's a big region, it's many countries. I think if you read into what the EU is, European Commission is saying about the national broadband development plans, you will see that the messages, there's no one recipe. Each situation is unique. I think what is really important, and if you look at who, in terms of which governments are doing better than the others, I think it's, as always, let's start from understanding very well what our particular country is dealing with in terms of, where do we start from, what do we have today, and then, that is a good basis for the future. I think very often the strategies are necessarily well grounded into the reality of today. The situations of the different countries are different. You have the different competitive situation, you have different, obviously the networks are at different development levels, but you also have different demographics. You have, more or less of highly concentrated urban spaces where it's easier to deploy connectivity. Some countries, and many of them are in our region, have a lot of rural space, which is much more difficult to cover with connectivity, with different technologies, still possible. So I think it's, first of all, is understanding where we are, as a country, and then working from there. We do have some relatively well-performing countries in the region. So if you look at Hungary, you look at Malta, Cyprus, I think we already have, and some of them will already reach some of the goals on the connectivity. And I think one of the other aspects is that very often we might focus specifically on a particular technology or goal, so like broadband. But you mentioned yourself, there is 5G. I will also add there is satellite technology. We have Starlink already available, and Starlink, by the way, Ukraine, Starlink, big deal, right? I mean, we had solved a lot of, a lot of issues have been solved by having satellite technology. So I think very often it's about, I would probably emphasize the need of understanding where we are and what do we want to solve, what problems are we facing, what are the use cases that we really need to look at, yeah? And then when we know that, it's much easier to find a solution, be it a broadband, be it 5G, 4G first of all, and 5G next, and then where those cannot reach, then you can have satellites, and some governments, we talked with you, some governments actually subsidizing or thinking about subsidizing some of these technologies if they can solve the issues. So, for instance, I think when we talk about 5G, very often we need to, first of all, agree on what are the specific use cases that we will want to run the 5G for. Mm-hmm. And then maybe we can prioritize the deployment based on those use cases. I was surprised when I saw that, but we did a study with an EY which basically showed that the biggest midterm potential for 5G is in manufacturing. In industrial zones that are relatively small, right, where you can install the networks relatively easy, where you have a lot of data need. So that was, to me, surprising initially because I thought maybe it's autonomous cars or something, right? But for autonomous cars, first of all, providers or manufacturers, they include a lot of autonomous technology within the car. They don't want to depend on the connectivity. And then the second is that would require a lot of coverage on the roads, right? So that's not the immediate case. And then smart cities, entertainment, education, healthcare are the next application cases. So if we focus on what we want to use this for, then I guess we can kind of much better to respond to that. And then to conclude with this, I think where the countries have shown success is actually where the engagement exists, where the local actors, municipal, regional, local communities, they actually clearly know what they want, what they need, and they engage with the private sector, they engage with the government, they in a way push the central government to act, to deliver results for them.
That sounds great. I think especially the point on the satellite internet, I think it's a very promising technology. It's well tested. We've seen it doing wonders in Ukraine. And I'm glad to say that Slovenia and Germany at this moment are seriously considering subsidizing this technology for the most distant households. And I think this should be the model also for other countries, at least until we're able to build broadband in a couple of years' time. But we cannot leave those people hanging for the intermediate period. Now, Ular, I've already mentioned, you're the biggest expert on data centers on this panel, and data centers are certain aspect of digital infrastructure. But there are also certain other aspects that I'm sure you'll want to highlight and share with us.
Yes, thank you. The bandwidth will be there. I used to be also 5 years a telecom operator, and it's a matter of the profit and loss calculations and some social inclusiveness good supported by the government. It will be there. Question is there a need? Where is the use case of that? Very share this opinion. But connectivity for me is also not connectivity only on the bandwidth, but also on the logical connectivity of interoperability of the systems we have here. It's how much time and money we waste on the long-lasting integration projects instead of having some common standards there. There is a practice in Estonia called X-Road. This is now the open source software, now used in multiple countries, where you actually build a really specific handshake of the trust servers, enabling everyone remain the owner of the database, remain the owner of technology, but still share the data very easily among all the participants of the roundtable. I think this practice or any other practice, I think in this region we can definitely speed up the interoperability of those systems we run. The bandwidth is there already for that, already existing, but we don't use this feature there. And also the sustainability in terms of the economical sustainability. Are we actually producing enough profits here for the R&D to keep fighting the technological curves or being ahead of the technological curves? I don't think we have them enough here. I think our IT companies and many companies are limited on both sides, the purchasing power of the citizens and also some competition boards are regulating some prices, also dominant players. But we don't have enough capex actually for R&D in this region. I think this is also part of connectivity. How you stay connected is you actually changing the technological curves. I used to be when there was a 2G and 3G and 4G and 5G. Maybe it will be 10G as well, but you need to collect money for that to enable innovation. And also connectivity is also a matter of the stakeholders' risks. In Green Energy Data Center, we took the niche saying that this is the most trusted stakeholders you can have. We have 3C Initiative Investment Fund as an investor, not because it was the best deal on the market. That's one good reason that's so good. But the other reason is that the stakeholders are the 12 national banks of this region. It means that strategically we can fight against the Silk Road or Russia or any other kind of concepts, and we already probably are matching the future Blue Dot network principles of the OECD, what are under preparation. I mean, connectivity has many more angles than only bandwidth, and all those must be managed complex ways. But when it comes to data centers, there is no single solution. One data center doesn't solve all. There's a hybrid solution needed. Something in cloud, something on the ground, something offsite on the ground, like Estonian Data Embassy project in the Luxembourg. And the data, every midnight, we copy the most critical systems of the social registers, commercial registers, land registers to Luxembourg servers. But we have the Vienna Convention and the embassy rule in that white room means that our data never leave our legal territory. It's a lot of innovative ideas and pilots, and I think we can just speed up them to implement through this region. And we could be the most interoperable region in the world very fast because we have same legacy deficit.
Ular, these are some great points, and thank you for raising the issue of R&D expenditure in the region. Our countries are still in the, I would say, second part of the European countries when it comes to investments in R&D, which is not a great news. It's something that needs to be improved very fast, and I think the Recovery and Resilience Fund and many other European funds can help us do that, because without our own research and innovation, there will be no long-term growth and prospect. So thanks for bringing up this topic. Now, John, you are a man of business. As I mentioned, you run a super successful local tech company, Microtech. You are, in a way, in the business of connectivity, or at least when it comes to hardware part. And how are you looking at it from the business perspective? I know you sell your stuff all over the world. How do you see our region comparing with other parts of the world or Europe? And especially, I know education is something you're super passionate about. How important is to connect both terms, connectivity and education?
Well, Microticals is also a very large and charitable company contributing to large amounts to charity for universities, research institutes, a children's hospital. And one of the big projects we started and a real use case that can show great results in many areas of the region is to promote a network to support big data, which big data, what it means is you could, just in some numbers, but data networks where you'd like to have 100 gigabits per second fiber connections connecting many buildings or more, universities. And the different kinds of big data you might have heard of are genetic data, genomics, the DNA of the cell, whole genome sequencing. Also, the big data that artificial intelligence works with, where it combs through large amounts of data. And this is an area where in Latvia and I think across the three Seas nations, we have a great history in mathematics and engineering and education. From legacy times. There are many contests, Olympiads, even during the Soviet Union times. And this is a great resource, and the children and the engineers and their families that really value technology to give the tools and for the researchers and scientists that they can use to connect systems, to connect together, connect research institutes, to connect hospitals. Maybe a specific use case I can give you is that we're talking about during the COVID times for the MRIs and the CAT scans and things like this, which are now very big data as well. They can, if someone needs a report fast and a doctor can't go to another hospital, to have big data networks that connect them to this big imaging and the resources they need to give the patient the best diagnostics from a distance. So I see big data as a way to drive research, science, education, and the things that will really affect people. The things that can affect health, that can affect the direction of their research and companies and starting businesses. So that's my and Renata, I see you nodding there. She's been working on these different things as well. And I know many people, of course. Google is involved in all kinds of big data projects and genetics with their cloud servers. So that's the use case I'd like to push forward.
Thanks, John. I think this was a great statement. I think you brought us right to the digital skills part. And that's great because we know that the digital divide is one of the greatest challenges our societies are facing today. Now, if we look at this region specifically, we can see that almost half of the adult population doesn't even have the basic digital skills. That's unacceptable. Now, there's a lot being done when it comes to different governments doing different things, but also when it comes to companies doing some incredible initiatives, projects, and programs in this area. And of course, Karan, I'm looking at you. Google has been incredibly active in this area, probably showing the way also when it comes to the rest of the industry. So what's your vision of digital inclusion? What are the initiatives that you're doing internationally and more specifically within this region? How are you helping us?
So, Mark, I'm really appreciative that you'd raised this, with such prominence. From our perspective, this question of digital inclusion is super important for at least two reasons. One, without inclusive growth, you are not going to have sustainable growth. I think we've seen the era that we are in is one with strong populist sentiments. We need to get everyone to be a beneficiary of what the digital revolution can enable. And then secondly, as we look around the world at countries that have made progress on that digital journey, we typically see, four things. We see investment in infrastructure. We've just talked about that. We've seen a government mindset that is digital first, and that's one thing that we really see in this region, from procurement to e-government to other kinds of initiatives. The third is a regulatory climate that enables and encourages digital investment and growth. And again, we see good signs of that here. But the fourth, and in some ways maybe the most critical, is this question of digital skilling. It's a question of how do you get people trained and equipped to be successful contributors into that. So at Google, what we've done is globally, we launched this program called Grow with Google. And we've globally, we've now trained more than 70 million people around the world.
Wow.
And in the region, we started with an initial goal back in 2015 of 1 million people. We hit that. Last year, we doubled down another million before this was during the pandemic. Hit that number and are going to be continuing to grow that. And this is, this is everyone from students up to and including business executives, small, medium-sized businesses, for whom that skill set is so critical to being enabled to be a successful participant, and particularly during the time of the pandemic. Businesses, small businesses that were connected were ones that were much more likely to survive. So we're excited about that body of work. The other thing I would mention is the importance of enabling and supporting civil society as they are looking to thrive in this digitally enabled era as well. And that's a space where our philanthropic arm, google.org, has been particularly active, including an initiative launched here in partnership with the 3Cs project. We've launched what's called our Google Impact Challenge, and through that have been working with this incredibly inspirational group of social entrepreneurs focused on everything from skilling women and girls to small businesses. So there's so much that can be done in this space. Again, I think it calls for the 3Cs sort of mentality of partnership, a mentality of connectivity, but exciting to see the progress that's possible here.
I love it. I love this holistic approach because in the end, it's not just about the older generation. It's also about business owners, SMEs in particular. It's also about kids. How do we get them excited about STEM? We all know we need many, many more IT and other engineers. So we really should be looking at this problem, or let's say challenge, in a holistic and comprehensive manner. Now, Renate, I know Microsoft has also launched a huge skilling initiative during the pandemic. You've been helping out many NGOs in this region and beyond. What have you done so far, or let's put an emphasis on your future plans for the region in this area?
Yes, thank you. But I want to connect with skilling topic back to connectivity and use cases. Because we were discussing the importance of infrastructure based on use cases where we will use this infrastructure. We were talking about connectivity and especially data important there. And then we need skilled people. And then we have real connectivity. And I think if we look at what we are doing with all skilling programs all across the globe and also here in this region, we are connecting people who need new skills with the use cases or the places where they can apply those skills immediately. And that's why we are having both training programs for different groups that are combined with the ability to practice in internships. And we started this as a pilot here in Baltics. And actually, this proved to be a very good approach because people immediately can apply those skills and build on them. Be it a small business, education, healthcare. So this gives this practicality and sense of why we are doing this. And talking about future, we will continue our efforts in improving digital skills, but not because of our first topic that we discussed at the beginning of the panel. We want to also increase cybersecurity skills. And we just launched a program in Poland for mostly Ukrainian refugees, women that are there. It will be 9 months long program, also with internship, but we will roll out in the region because we see that cybersecurity skills are becoming more and more important, and we need each and every individual to understand how they can protect themselves, their families, their business, and also their countries.
I think that's great. And what I also like about Microsoft is how involved you are in the digital transformation of educational systems all across the region and the world. And here I would turn to Linas, our government expert. Obviously, we can organize thousands, tens of thousands of courses, but until we formalize this kind of education, we can only do this much. So where do we stand when you look at the region and the digital transformation of the curriculum, of the educational systems? I know Estonia has done a marvelous job. I heard about this incredible program called Programming Tiger that teaches basics of programming preschool kids already. So, Linas, what's your take on this region compared to other regions? What are the best examples that should be copied across the board?
So first of all, I think if you look at the policy of the governments, and I think we have a very good occasion to compare, because the Next Generation EU, or RRF as we know it from before, has provided a possibility for the governments to put together plans that they want to deploy to basically deal with the consequences of COVID pandemic, as well as to build newly for the future. What you will see, both in those plans as well as kind of more generally in the policy agenda of most of the governments, you will see that number one item, or at least one of the top 3 items on that agenda, will be education. Education for the future. Everyone realizes that things are changing fast, that the skills we have are not sufficient, and we don't even probably fully know which skills we will need in the future. So we need to build systems that are future prone, so to say. So I think, from the policy perspective, there is clearly a willingness. Now, whether there is sufficient implementation capacity and capability, that's another question, because I don't think that's sufficiently strong yet in our countries. We do have some examples. You mentioned one. There is more. I think there is a number of countries that are, of course, working, and some of them working for this for a long time, with the transformation of the education system. I think some new wins are coming in with things like micro-credentials that would allow you to build your new skills from many, very often digital courses that kind of build your profile. However, I think, to be fair, there is a very large challenge for the governments and for universities and for schooling system. Why? Because we are actually, right now, we are in the moment of the transformation of education based on the digital kind of new reality of the digital. We see, I think, in more from outside of our region rather than within our region, we see universities turning fully digital, so kind of digitizing all of their course materials. We are looking at maybe more importantly, the operating models changing. So you cannot really run anymore the university of the now or of the yesterday in the same way for the future, because your delivery models will now need to cater for the combination hybrid model of delivery physically as well as virtually. You will need to be able to think through the lens of kind of getting degrees possibly across different universities, because you want a very individualized path for every one of us. So in the future, we are not looking at this mass education market anymore. And that means that now both the government, in terms of the policy, in terms of the detailed policy, as well as the schooling system, as well as the universities, as well as the vocational training and lifelong learning systems, need to now kind of change as we go, basically changing our wheels on the go, and that's not easy. And I think some of the governments are doing this better. There is some good thinking going on. You mentioned a particular course of some kind. So I think we see things happening where I think we still will probably need to kind of work more on is how do we solve this systematically? Because I think that's where the challenge is. And for the systematic solution, I think the first realization that the governments, and to be frank with you, I think there is still many governments in our region, also in the other countries, they still need to realize that we will need a different kind of education system in the future.
Linas, be specific. Which governments? Which ones are the best?
Well,
which ones are lagging behind?
I'm
Let's
not,
do some
I'm
naming
not
and
ready to
shaming
give
here.
you a rating here. Apologies for that. I can maybe say that some examples in the region have been run well, very often with some of the organizations that are NGOs, for instance. Many of us know Junior Achievement, I think. So, like, you will see Junior Achievement doing some good programs in several countries. I will not mention specific ones, I think, but like in several countries where you would actually develop very good courses for the new skills on entrepreneurship, for instance, right? So I think you have these examples. I don't have a model government in my mind right now from the region.
Let me help you there.
Yes,
so when
please
we
do.
were looking at the model governments, or let's say the model transformations of educational systems, we were primarily looking at Estonia, Poland, and Croatia. They've gone the farthest. And here I'm talking about integration of robotics, programming, AI, even cybersecurity skills in their, basic curriculum for kids, because you need to start early. As I said before, we need to bridge this talent gap. That's enormous. And the problem we're facing, and now I'm wearing the previous government hat, where do we get the teachers for these skills? We simply lack capacity. And any kind of systematic change takes a while, especially in the field of education. We all know this is the most conservative sector of all. It moves slowly. It's very much as it used to be from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Okay? So talent is in short supply. And cybersecurity was mentioned a couple of times before, and I would like to turn to Michał with the question about, now everyone's talking about the security of the core infrastructure. And of course, this is something that all the governments are looking into and investing a great deal into the resilience of the electricity grid and everything else that makes our societies function. But there's also the business part, especially the SMEs that usually don't have the resources to protect themselves properly. So what should we be doing to protect our businesses from cyber attacks and to make our economies more resilient?
Thank you for this question. This is absolutely crucial. After COVID, during the war in Ukraine, absolutely cybersecurity, not only on the highest level, but on level SMEs and every citizen, it is very important. But first, I would like to start from one sentence about skills, because right now we are testing Polish pupils in schools about level of digital skills. And what is the most important for us, the best results in schools, Polish pupils has in questions about cybersecurity. It's a very good information that in this area, level of knowledge in young people is very, very high, and it's going better. So the future is quite nice right now. But what we have right now in SMEs and what to do to help them. Of course, I think that three steps. First step, we have to explain SMEs, every citizen in our countries, that cybersecurity is not it's issue not only for government and the biggest companies, but especially for SMEs, especially for every our neighbors, our friends, our families. And without elementary skills, elementary digital hygiene in every citizen's life, it will be impossible to build a secure ecosystem in our region. Second thing, I think that we have to explain our SMEs that spending money on cybersecurity, it's not a cost, it's an investment. It's crucial because it's still many of our SMEs are thinking about cybersecurity, about it's necessary but cost, and there is nothing back to me in my pocket if I will spend money for some cybersecurity systems in my companies. So that's why we have to, as a national government, build a special program to stimulate spending money on cybersecurity system. For example, by tax reliefs in every country. For example, in Poland we have a special tax reliefs on this issue, and I can confirm that it's a good solution for cybersecurity. And last thing, but not least, skills. Our companies still are looking for specialists from cybersecurity. Sometimes, especially in SMEs, there is a way of thinking that if I have some digital specialist, I'm safe. Not. Cybersecurity specialist is absolutely completely different person in our staff, and we have to find these people on the market. That's why we have to build special partnership programs between business and administration to prepare special classes, schools for cybersecurity skills. Maybe for different people, a special program for requalifications for our staff in our companies. Without these 3 steps, in my opinion, it's impossible to build a secure system in our economy. And last thing, we have to understand that cybersecurity is a challenge, huge challenge for us, but it's opportunity for our businesses, local businesses. In every country in Free Seas region, we can find local companies which offer very good cybersecurity products. For example, in Poland, we have a Cyber Made in Poland cluster. It's almost 100 companies which offered global products from cybersecurity systems. So we have to understand that it's a challenge, but opportunity for our businesses too.
Michał, thanks so much. You just convinced me to become a cybersecurity specialist. And I'll be moving to Poland soon. Anyway.
Okay, I'm waiting
now,
for you.
Cybersecurity is one of those big issues that no country or no region, for that matter, can solve on its own. It requires a lot of international cooperation, and here we cannot overemphasize the transatlantic cooperation. I think the war in Ukraine showed us how vital our alliance is, not just when it comes to joint prosperity that we've enjoyed for such a long time, but also when it comes to hardcore security. And also when it comes to tech dialogue, there are issues like cybersecurity, like AI, like semiconductors, and many, many, many other topics that we can only solve or address together. And here, Karan, I would like to ask you, how do you see this tech dialogue between the EU and the US going? How are you satisfied with the progress being made within the TTC? And what kind of role should the Three Seas region play in this dialogue?
So I very much agree with you that at the core of resolving some of these really big challenges, there is no alternative to a robust transatlantic, not just dialogue, but really convergence ultimately. Partly this is influenced by, I think, where we see the geopolitical challenges. Partly it's the nature of the problems themselves that are not going to be fixed by a US-only solution or a Europe-only solution. They're going to demand that. We were encouraged, I'll tell you, Google, we were strongly supportive of the launch of the Transatlantic Trade Dialogue, the TTC Council. And I would say, it's made some progress. It's had 2 meetings. There's been discussions, good discussions there. What we've still yet to see, I think, is real convergence. What we have yet to see is sort of both sides saying, okay, before I take X step or Y step, we will sit down, we will talk about those challenges in common and how do we approach them. I do think Russia-Ukraine was interesting. There was more, in a sense, coordination that happened there. And we've seen that play out, I think, in the most recent TTC dialogue. But there's still a lot to be done, whether you want to talk about privacy, whether you want to talk about content regulation, whether you want to talk about market-based regulation. There are divergent notions that do need to be reconciled, not frankly for the biggest companies of the world. We've got the resources to be able to throw it at a lot of compliance resources, but really for the small, medium-sized companies that otherwise simply just are not going to take that step forward. They're not going to innovate for the next market. So we do think it's important. 3Cs potentially could be a very interesting mechanism to spur that forward. I do think that you see, in some sense, more commonality between the values that we see in the countries represented in this gathering and the United States than perhaps elsewhere. A common appreciation, I think, for the importance of freedom of expression online, a common belief in the importance of innovation as being part of the solution to market challenges. So whether 3Cs can ultimately help drive and push that transatlantic convergence, I think will remain to be seen, but we would very much be supportive of that initiative, and hopefully it'll be one of the things resulting from these gatherings.
That's great to see. That's great to hear. I think there are great similarities between CE and the US, also when it comes to the sheer mentality.
Yes.
So when I moved to Poland many years ago, it seemed like US in Europe. There was this can-do attitude, this entrepreneurial spirit that really got us all going. And from our past experience, we can say that, centrally guided economy got us ruined, but free markets basically made us rich, or making us rich by the day. Now, it's super important, I think, for our countries not to become the victims of its own success, meaning we shouldn't become lazy. We should continue to reform. We should continue to innovate. We should continue to empower our entrepreneurs that in the end will be the digital champions of Europe or perhaps the world. So here, maybe for the closing question, before I open the floor for a couple of your thoughts and questions, I would turn to John, our entrepreneurship specialist on the panel. Like, what are the core foundations of a super successful and open economy? So what is our added value? What's our advantage? Is it in the tax system? Is it in the labor legislation? What is that magic mix that can ensure that we continue being one of the most attractive destinations for investments and talents from around the world?
I think, of course, the foundation is a well-educated workforce and very determined and interested people in making the products and the technology and the digital solutions. And then secondly is openness and cooperation, so that each accomplishment can be built on and an ecosystem, an environment where people can grow and feel appreciated and know they're doing important things. So as for, I guess, competition against other systems, I can say certainly we have that kind of spirit here in Latvia and the 3Cs nations to move forward. And I think that's a big reason for others and companies to look to invest in the 3Cs region, because there are a lot of determined, smart, and interested people working on new solutions. And the digital just touches everything we do today, and the war and Ukraine, and we see how important it is for them to connect with the refugees, to get information about what's really going on, so we can't be so influenced by propaganda. So certainly we feel this very closely, how important having digital solutions to help us in the future.
And that's even more important, I think, for smaller countries, because we're not that visible on the global map. And it's great to see Estonia, Latvia, and many others doing so well and remaining so competitive. Now, I would like to open the floor for your questions or comments. But please, since we have a lot to discuss, please be short and concise, if possible. Not all at the same time, please. Shall we have to select the volunteer?
Mark, if
So perhaps, Ular, you can add something there as the representative of the digital champion of the world, known as Estonia.
it's many reasons to say Slava Ukraini, but one thing I want to say that once again is because of already 2 years ago they started a mobile-first digital government policy there, and it's something we can learn from there as well. We can help them, but we can actually learn for ourselves a lot how the mobile-first approach could actually make digital skills more available. It's very hard to teach people to use computers and systems, but they're definitely going to use the mobile phones. That's one thing to learn.
Absolutely.
And second thing to learn in this region is how we can learn to unlearn. There's so many things we know what is disturbing us actually to go further with the new innovations. And there's two ways how we can pronounce two words, why not? In one way, why not, or why not? I think that the second way of what we have used in Estonia a lot, why not? And trying at least, but being safe, but trying at least. And also instead of competition in the region, positive peer pressure. We lack that as well, just not going there at who is better, but actually how can we together export from this region. We never discuss it, we always discuss inside the region, more business here, more business there, still sharing the same blanket, but Africa, Latin America, the skills we have here, solutions we test here are actually globally needed. And together, Estonia has so much fame, but we don't have actually IT industry and the scale. We cannot export. We have just the small companies there. I think all the companies in Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania can take part of that attention to this region, to the Estonia, and export even more from here. We are not discussing that at all.
Ular, that's a fantastic point. And I think one of the transformational things that happened in the past couple of years is, we stopped thinking locally or regionally. Okay, our founders no longer want to conquer, their home market of Romania or Poland or whatever. They want to conquer the world. And that makes a big difference because they're not looking for, the fastest exit, but they're playing the long game. And I think it's this global ambition that needs to drive also our policymaking and the civil society. Because in the end, we compete in a super globalized world. Even Poland, which is a big European country, is minuscule in the global setting. And I think this is one of the greatest advantages of this initiative. It pulls us all together and makes us look like a one giant market, which we actually are. And Michał,
two sentences for conclusion. Two sentences exactly. I fully agree. Cooperation, partnership inside Free Seas region and between the Free Seas region and United States absolutely is crucial for our region. Cooperation, building a cross-border business projects. Absolutely, we have to learn. Exchange our experiences between our countries and build common projects of digital industry. Absolutely is crucial for us. And last sentence, last thing, but in digital sector, we need regulations, but we need fair rules, but not barriers. And absolutely is crucial for this industry to avoid any over-regulation situation. And I would like to only few words from Eva Meidel. She said today in Sofia during Economic Forum, I think that this sentence is absolutely crucial for our future. Regulation must act as a bridge to our allies, not a wall to protect ourselves. And I think that is crucial for future of our transatlantic cooperation and building a digital industry in Free Seas region.
And let's end on this optimistic and visionary note of Eva Meidel, a very dear friend of mine. Let's continue cooperating, dear friends. Let's continue innovating. Let's continue learning. And let's continue being, as Steve Jobs would say, hungry and foolish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
To the fantastic panelists and to the great audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Some of the best minds on digitalization.
Were we on time?
You want more time?
No. We deserve a gold medal, I guess. It was right on time.
I think so, yeah. Do we have any candies or something? Right.
A beer will do.
But some of the best minds on digitalization in the 3 Seas regions and beyond worked under leadership in this panel, Mark, so thank you very much for that. And if I remember correctly, you promised to move to Poland?
Yes.
And Michal was ready to hire you already?
You are more than welcome.
All right, so
Let's
this is
negotiate, my friend.
right
It's not
there.
a done deal yet.
Right there, how business-to-business networking functions, right? So let us continue with networking over our last coffee break. Enjoy it responsibly. And I'll see you back in 15 minutes for our concluding panel.